Some residents of Soweto say they are at their wits' end after 2 children died from suspected poisoning after consuming biscuits from a local spaza shop. The community wants government to regulate spaza shops operated by migrants. We speak now on the role of government and the community in creating safer environments. We are joined by Informal Traders Association President Rosheda Muller. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your time this morning. Perhaps let's take a look at the incidents that have played themselves out in terms of the incident maybe in Naledi specifically, because there was also another incident during the week. But it is alleged that these children bought biscuits from a local spaza shop, which led to food poisoning. The official post-mortem is yet to be made public in terms of what happened. But to your reading, what is your understanding of the relationship between community members and spaza shops?
Good morning to everyone, and thank you for the request to be interviewed on this matter affecting informal businesses. Indeed, one has to look at a very big, broad spectrum of what's happening here. And the first thing I want to say that is there's a very big disconnect between local government and the informal sector. It is imperative that link become closer, that the local government needs to realize the role of the informal sector within townships and all over South Africa. And that is not being done, whether it is a not political will or whether it is capacity needs to be understood. However, we as the IEDF, the Informal Economy Development Forum, has been pushing to be the conduit between government and the corporates. So this is a very, very sad event that has taken place and an eye-opener. And it's sad that we must now only reflect on aftermath to put regulation in place. There has to be serious consideration of regulation and inspections of all spaza shops, that these spaza shops are legally operating and that their products are coming from suppliers or that are, well known and supply bigger shops as well. It's also an eye-opener for the community. There has to be a close link between community and informal trade. Now, what we advocate within the informal economy is that in every town, wherever there are informal businesses, there should be an organization representing the informal traders and that they have a link to that community. So, very, very sad what has happened now.
Okay. Ma'am, help us understand how the township economy works, because that word is bandied about so much, and you speak of government not understanding the role of the informal sector, but they are very much speaking about supporting the township economy or growing the township economy. So are you saying essentially that there's no understanding of what the township economy is? As someone who works in this space, what is that?
No. The township economy it's a word going around. It's on everyone's tongue. Yes, but do they understand how it operates? Do they understand what is needed to make that an enabling environment for those traders and the communities in those areas? There is a lot spoken at the higher level, and that's why we are saying there has to be decentralization right to those little towns that are affected. Now, as the IEDF and NITASA, the National Informal Traders Organization, we have members throughout the country in the most rural of towns, and many of their complaints that come through to us is the fact that local government does not give them a hearing or gives them a hearing sometimes, but does not implement their needs. So there is this disconnect that I'm speaking about, and I think there has to be a much greater emphasis put on the relationship and the working relationship between the local municipal officials and the informal training organizations as well as the communities. More awareness is also very important. Like, the mother and father goes out to work for the day, the child is at school and has maybe a 5 or a 10 rand, and he or she spends it out at the spaza shop, not knowing the impact of what has happened. But this is very, very sad, because who would want to give a child something that will kill him? So, yeah, much deeper investigation needs to go into this, but also much more closer cooperation between and collaboration between local government and the informal sector and communities.
Ma'am, we were in Naledi in Soweto yesterday, and tonight there's going to be a candlelit vigil for the toddlers that passed away who are going to be buried this week. And community members pointedly say they do not want Pakistani nationals who are operating some of the spaza shops in their communities to be there anymore, calling for them to leave. To your understanding, what is the relationship between Pakistani nationals who own spaza shops in the townships and the community members? Because in some events you'll find that they actually give community members loans on basics, right? So if you want bread or you want eggs and you don't have money at that time, you don't even need to say anything. You take those items and then you come back and you pay them at another time. And so there's a relationship also that we need to understand about what is going on between community members and some of the owners of these spaza shops.
Indeed, we have seen across the country that the foreign nationals, especially, the Somalis and the Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, have mushroomed throughout the country. However, there has been some very good relations, as you have just mentioned. We have seen also during the Ramadan, when it's a fasting period, how they would donate and that. But this is now unacceptable. Now one has to look with an eye of, is it an individual issue or is it something that, is going to happen throughout our country? But I think what is very important, there is a very big cry out for the local spazas to again re-establish themselves and to take ownership of the areas and the communities that they do live in. One hoped that one could have learned from these foreign spazas of how they became so successful, that we could implement that for our own marginalized people who are on the unemployed list. We have to look at that, and we have to realize that the skills development for our own people is really needed on the ground, and much more, there has to be much more proactive activism with regard to establishing that, and I hope that will be happening in the future. But the sadness and the loss is deeply hurting, and our condolences to the parents, and just to tell the communities, please be aware of what your child is doing and where that child is during the day when you are not with him or her.
Ma'am, just very finally, finally for us, are you aware of some of the items that you will find in specific spaces, so maybe in townships, that you wouldn't necessarily find elsewhere in the country? Whether it's sweets, it's chips, it's biscuits, it's whatever produce that is specifically targeted in certain areas that does not necessarily, or you can't find necessarily in other areas?
Well, what we have noticed in spaza shops is that they do go for the cheaper product. Now, we I don't want to say it's the truth or it's the rumors, but they are manufacturing this themselves, these little popcorns and drinks and biscuits and that. And maybe that is where the non-regulation is coming in, because nobody's monitoring, nobody's checking whether those products are, good for consumption. And that is where we need to force government to put more regulation and more inspection on all and every spaza shop. But I do know the spaza shops also sell you like a 5 rand sugar and a 10 rand oil, whereas that you won't find in a supermarket. So, this is such a very, very complicated matter, but I think the core of the issue is that one needs to get the South Africans who are unemployed back into employment to ensure that they control communities, that spaza shops is in their hands, but it's going to need a lot of support and financial support, which is not very easy to get into their hands to establish themselves as the community spaza businesses.
Ma'am, thank you so much for your contribution this morning. Rosheda Muller is with the South African Informal Traders Alliance. She's the president of the organization.